Hey guys, this is Jen Graff. I am debuting our first episode of our family YouTube channel, so bear with me. I feel extremely awkward right now talking by myself into this camera, and as you can see, Muddy wants to join us. Muddy, quit it. Anyways, I didn't know what the first episode should be about, so I think it was best if I just introduce our family to you guys. Some of you guys know us through Facebook, but people who don't, I just want to give you a little history about our family. But for a while now, I've been wanting to start a YouTube channel to document our daily lives for our family to reminisce on later, but to also show other families how much love and adventure Ellie has given us. Having a special needs child is challenging, but it is much more rewarding, and I thought I would never have said that before, but coming into our new normal and we're adjusting a little bit, we are so thankful for Ellie and what she brings. But anyways, I guess I should start by telling our story from the beginning. Josh and I started dating in 2007 and got married New Year's Day in Vegas in 2010. We traveled, had exciting, fun experiences with really interesting people, and we decided to work hard and save up to start our own family. In 2017, it was a very exciting year. We built our very first home that was ours, and we were pregnant with Ellie. My pregnancy was a dream. If you ask any of my friends, they probably roll their eyes because it was a perfect pregnancy. I had no issues whatsoever. Our checkups were fine. Ellie never bothered me. I loved being pregnant. And then it came time for her to enter the world. A day after her due date, she was full term, I started having contractions at home and was already scheduled to be induced at the hospital that night. Once settled in my room, my contractions really started to make themselves known. Right at 5 centimeters, my water broke and there was meconium, which is baby poop, if you guys don't know, mixed in. I knew from our birthing classes meconium meant the baby was stressed, so I started to worry. However, the nurses reassured me that Ellie was fine, her heart rate was stable. I should have pushed harder for a C-section, but this was my very first birth, and I trusted the nurses, so the epidural took, thank God. I don't know how women do it naturally. At 5 centimeters, I was ready to pass out. So anyways, fast forward 10 hours later, I was at 10 centimeters and pushed for an hour. Then the doctor finally came in, and those last 2 minutes of labor changed everything. Ellie had swallowed meconium, got stuck in the birth canal. The umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck. She came out blue and limp, no sound at all. It was terrifying. They took her to the table right next to me and started doing CPR. It took them 2 minutes to revive her. She had 0 APGAR scores, which means she was not responsive to anything, non-responsive. But after they brought her to, they placed her on my chest, and she was still a little blue, just trying to get the blood back in her, but her eyes were open and she was looking around. My mom was right next to us, and she noticed her breathing didn't sound normal. She was very congested and raspy sounding. So we notified the nurse, and she said she was going to take her to the nursery to clean her up, and that's going to make her cry, so hopefully it would get out whatever was in her throat, so she can cough it up. So 30 minutes later, I'm in the room by myself, and Josh went to go check on her, and he came back and said they took her to the NICU. No one said that they were going to do this, and I didn't get to hold my baby again for another 12 hours. But 2 days after 2 days of monitoring in the NICU, the doctors gave clearance for us to leave. He said everything looked well, and to follow up with her doctor. So she did have colic, which was very challenging, but she got through it and got over it, thankfully. At her 2-month checkup, her doctor said everything looked great. Josh then asked her to double check Ellie's eyes because she hasn't been making eye contact. She hadn't been making eye contact. The doctor looked at her a second time and then told us that she's seen another baby like this before who wasn't making eye contact and wasn't tracking, and said that baby is now blind. I instantly started bawling my eyes out. The doctor then called for an emergency MRI, and we took her that night in town for an MRI. And later, the doctor was showing us the results and showed that there was a brain injury to her cerebellum, which controls fine motor skills and balance, most likely due to her traumatic birth. That wasn't for sure, but most likely it was because of that, with her lack of oxygen. So they didn't mention anything about her being blind, but she wasn't tracking, which is that, and that's a fine motor skill. So that kind of gave us reassurance. Well, maybe she's, can see, but she just isn't coordinated enough to track yet. So the rest of the year, we were in and out of doctor offices, different specialists. The ophthalmologist at 4 months said it's too early to tell if she would have vision problems or not. Her first neurologist in town said that she's seen worse cases of MRIs and brain damage and brain injury. And now those kids are perfectly fine. So we were given a little bit of hope that she would eventually catch up. In a swallow study that we did locally, said that she needed thicker liquids to swallow rather than thin consistency. She needed a honey thick consistency to swallow properly. Thinner liquid would cause aspiration, and that's when liquids or food get into your lungs, and you either choke or your body adapts to it and it's silent, and there's no choking, it just goes straight in the lungs. So that could cause pneumonia. She's never had pneumonia before, or ever. She's never had it. So we just thickened her bottles. So during this time, she started having these strange movements where her head would tilt to her ear, and so her neck would be like this, and her eyes would wander. One eye could be looking straight at you, and the other one would be somewhere else. So they didn't always link up, but during these movements, they would go all over the place. And sometimes she would vomit, sometimes she would cry, sometimes she would act totally fine, just stuck in this position for hours. I mean, 1 hour to 20 hours, 3 to 4 times a week. It gradually got to that point. It didn't start off that way, but it gradually got to that point. No doctor in town could tell us what these movements were. They thought it was seizures, and it wasn't seizures. They did an EEG, and there was no signs of a seizure. She was on Keppra, and that didn't help anything. So we sought help in Atlanta, which is 2 hours away, at CHOA, which Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And we were scheduled to see another neurologist and 3 other specialty doctors for GI, pulmonology, and ENT. to try to get some answers what this movement disorder was. So the three GI doctors, they wanted to know their swallow study for their records, and this was a couple months after her initial one, and it showed aspiration for all three consistencies. They tried several different types of consistencies. So now they wanted to shove a tube down her nose that would go into her belly to feed her. And it's called an NG tube. It was very traumatic for me, and for her, just to see her suffering with this tube going down her nose. I was devastated, but eventually she got used to it. Like the next day she got used to it. It wasn't a big deal, but it took me a while to come to terms. This is how I have to feed my baby to get her to thrive and to live and not have a chance of pneumonia and aspirating. So later that year she got a G tube, which is so much better. It's just straight into her belly, and that's what we're used to now, and she's fine with that. So no longer did we have to shove the NG tube down her nose. So now to her neuro story. All of this took place right after her first birthday in February 2019. Her neurologist did another MRI, the one in Atlanta, to compare what the first MRI showed. When the results came back, it showed damage to her cerebellum, which we already knew, but also it showed half of her brainstem was missing. This, we were not informed of this in her first MRI. They said nothing of the brainstem, just the cerebellum. The doctor compared both MRIs, and they looked exactly the same, which is great because there wasn't any degeneration of her brain, but it showed that the brainstem was missing in the first one as well. So now, because of these results, she wanted to conduct a genetic test for pontocerebellar hypoplasia type 2A, TSEN54 gene. So that's a mouthful, but we just say PCH, so it's easier to say. In April, we received the results, which were positive. This just rocked our world. We had no idea what this was. We have no family history of this in either of our families. I'm from Michigan. He's from Georgia. Our families are huge, and we just don't have any special needs kids in our family. So we never knew of this. We never even thought to get tested for this. And this means both parents passed the gene to Ellie, causing her cerebellum and half of her brainstem to stop growing in the womb. So around 6 to 7 months in utero is when it just stopped growing. And it could have been earlier than that too, but so on top of her birth injury, she also has this gene mutation. It's such a rare disease that doctors really don't know a prognosis. Only about 100 people have been documented with this gene. Some children pass away during childhood. However, since joining our wonderful Facebook PCH group, we see kids doing well in their 20s and 30s, so we really just don't know. So we just take it one day at a time. And also thanks to this group, a couple parents suggested we try baclofen for Ellie's strange movement disorders, with her tilting her head and vomiting for hours and hours. After speaking to her neurologist about this medication, this has probably been almost a year going back and forth with different medications trying to figure this out. She prescribed this medication, baclofen, for Ellie, and within a couple weeks, her disorder, which is a form of dystonia, later we found out, decreased significantly. It went from 12 to 24 hours every other day. to maybe 30 minutes, could last an hour a couple times a month. So with this, she is able to keep food down and continue with therapies and continue to thrive. This dystonia was really holding her back from all of that. So we're extremely grateful for this group to suggest that, and the neurologist prescribing it and talking us through it. So since this baclofen is working so well, she's going to be on it long term, and they are wanting to put in a baclofen pump in her spine, basically. So the medicine is going to go straight to her spine and her nervous system rather than filtering through her liver. So it's going to give her liver a break. In February, which is next month, we're going to have a consultation with a surgeon and get that ball rolling. So stay tuned for that. So doctor's appointments and therapies are way too frequent for me to keep a full-time job. So I had to quit in 2019, a job that I had for 10 years and I loved, and they were my second family. I loved working, like I'm such a nerd, but I just loved it, and I loved my coworkers. So I really had to adjust to one, being a mom. That in itself is an adjustment. And then also having a special needs child and learning to care for her in a whole other way that I've never would have thought to have cared for her. She has several follow-up appointments and procedures throughout the year, some in town, but some are in Atlanta, which is 2 hours away. Ellie is totally dependent on us and will be for the rest of her life. Her journey relies on us devoting most of our time with working on her therapies, her feedings, medications, as well as oxygen at night. Our world was totally flipped upside down these past couple years, but now we've adjusted to our new normal and are so thankful for Ellie. Not saying that we don't have bad days, because we definitely do. More good days than bad days, though. Ellie is the sweetest little girl. She's happy 99% of the time. The only time she's upset is when she's tired, which is understandable. But she loves music. She loves toys, therapy even. She thinks it's playtime, which is great. Anything water related. She loves the pool. She loves splashing in the bath. She thinks it's so funny. She loves her animals, her pets. Snapchat, which is hilarious to see her laugh at her own self. And interacting with people, and especially kids. She loves kids. And COVID is just taking that away from us with interacting with other people and kids, especially with family members and her little cousins. And so hopefully once all this is back to normal, we can get back to hanging out with family and friends. But also, it would be nice to enroll her in school, to be with her peers and to learn from them, and for them to learn from her, because Ellie has taught us so many things we would never have even thought of before. I like to think I was somewhat of a compassionate person before Ellie, but now I feel like I'm on another level of compassion when I see a parent struggling or a child struggling. It's just, I've been there and I am there. So I want to reach out and help as much as I can now, with any advice or experience that I've had that could help ease the pain and make life easier for the parent and child or children. But Ellie has taught me to be more kind, appreciative, patient, and empathetic, and I'm so grateful for her lessons she's already given us in just her 3 little years of life. I hope our channel gives other families who might be struggling some joy and light, and to know that we do have fun. She does give us so much joy. And if you have any questions or suggestions, drop them in the comments. And feel free to oh my gosh, the last word I messed up. feel free to subscribe. Alright, so this is my first video, and hopefully the next one will be a lot more smoother. So, alright, bye!